Hi there, I'm Mike Gales for Everlast Nutrition, and in this video I want to go over how to clinch or tie up in boxing for beginners. I'm not exactly sure why, but there are not too many legitimate videos out there on how to clinch for beginners. I guess that's because some people think that it's not very macho or cool to have to clinch, but this is an essential skill for anyone who is looking to start boxing. Why should you learn to clinch? I know that many of you are thinking that your offense is ferocious and that your defense is impregnable, but a clinch can be very strategic and should definitely be part of your boxing game because it can give you the chance to regain your composure if you do happen to get hurt. It can also nullify your opponent's offense if you find yourself in an uncomfortable position. It can also give you the chance to alter the cadence or the tempo of the fight. And believe it or not, you can use the boxing clinch to exhaust other beginners because they won't know what you're about to learn about the boxing clinch. But first, let's take a look at what not to do. Your opponent has two arms and you're going to need to control both of them. Having control of only one arm without having control of your opponent's core or other arm will leave you getting hit. All he need do is take a step back to create some distance and he's going to hammer you. Long story short, he has two arms and you're going to need to control both of them. And we're going to get to how to do that in just a moment. Next, trying to clinch your opponent by wrapping up both of your arms high around your opponent's shoulders or neck doesn't really work in boxing. A tie style clinch isn't all that useful in boxing because in boxing you can't use your knees to strike. So if you try and clinch too high on your opponent, he's just going to bob and weave out from under your clinch. And if you're leaning forward for a clinch and he ducks under, that's going to leave you off balance and vulnerable to being countered. Conversely, if you clinch too low with both arms around your opponent's waist, he will simply take a step back and uppercut you to the face, so be mindful. But probably the main concept that you need to grasp here is that there can't be any distance between you and your opponent during your clinch, because if there is, he still has sufficient room to punch you hard. If you're trying to clinch someone at arm's length, well, be prepared to get hit. So now that you've seen some common mistakes that beginners usually make, let's move on. Now there are a few different ways to clinch in boxing, but I want you beginners to grasp the basic concepts. And so here we go. Rule number one, and you can probably call this the golden rule of clinching, is that you don't want to give him enough distance to punch. The more distance that he has, then the more leverage and force he can create. And that's the main thing that you're going to need to avoid. As long as you are clinched in tight and pinned up right against him, he could try and punch you as hard as he wants, but his punches are going to have little to no effect. So to reiterate, the golden rule is that you must stay close. Next, I need you to notice what I do with my head. I bring it in and I keep it pressed against his shoulder. So in essence, I'm using my opponent's shoulders to shield me from his punches. So again, my main objective when clinching is to get close enough so that my head is pressed against his shoulder. And then you're going to see that once my head is there, I keep it there by tying up his arm by placing it under my armpit, and then I simultaneously squeeze that arm and place my glove behind his elbow to lock it in place. So he's trying to wail away on me and blast me with his punches, and I don't like being hit, so I decide to clinch. Now I explode towards him, and I trap his arm under my armpit as I pull him in closer and place my head against his shoulder. And now the next step from here is that I control his core by placing my free arm behind the shoulder or elbow of his free arm to keep him under control and to keep him close. Once you have him all tied up, you need to hold on firmly. I can't get complacent here. I need to hold him firmly so that he can't step away, create any distance to punch. So now you have the basic concept covered. You're keeping him in close and your head is pinned up against his shoulder and you're controlling his core so he can't pull away. Now, if you can, try to walk him back to the ropes. Keeping his momentum moving backwards with his weight on his heels will ensure that his punches will have very little leverage. It doesn't matter if I tie up his lead arm or I tie up his rear arm because the principle always remains the same. Stay close and pin your head against his shoulder. Now if I initiate the clinch, then I'm usually the one that has the forward momentum, and I want to keep my momentum by driving forward and backing him up, because remember, I want to keep his weight on his heels. Next, let him fight it. Most beginners won't like being clinched, and in fact they may take it as an insult. It's almost as if I'm saying, "Oh, hold me." And now psychologically, the inexperienced fighter is going to mentally say, "Get your sweaty ass off of me," and he's going to try his best to push you off. Now notice, because my head is on his shoulder, I can lean on him, so he has to support most of my weight. And I'm a little heavy, and I want him to waste all of his energy trying to fight off my weight and my momentum. And I'm hoping that he exhausts himself trying to push me off. Now conversely, don't fight him. If he is the one with the forward momentum, and he has me backing me up on my heels, then all I need to do is keep him in close. And I'm gonna save my energy, and I'm gonna wait for the referee to initiate a clean break. There's no point wasting my energy for nothing. Next up, you must stay in control of the clinch. If your opponent has you in a clinch, then he can simply release that clinch at any time and start blasting you with punches when you're not ready to protect yourself. So you need to be mindful. During a break, the ref is going to instruct you to break clean, and that's one thing. But your opponent can simply release the clinch at any time before the ref gets there and start firing shots on you. And so you need to keep that in mind. So if you're clinched, just keep control and wait for the ref to separate you. So here I have him under control, and I motion to the ref, hey, he's clinching me. The point is that I control when the release of the clinch is going to be. So it's going to be either myself or the referee that's going to break the clinch, and not my opponent. Next, so maybe you have your opponent rocked and you want to avoid a clinch. Well, keeping your distance and using your footwork is going to be your best option. If his clinch is sloppy, then use the what not to do segment in this video on him. So duck under if his clinch is high, or use your free arm or distance to punch if his clinch is not tight enough. Now, if his clinch is solid, then you never want to use your arms to try pushing him off. There's no point having a bench press competition in a boxing match. Plus, extending your arms is always going to leave you vulnerable. Instead, use your core to rotate your shoulders and shrug him off to give you some room to strike. And then once you have enough distance, try and land some shots. So now, for all you beasts in the ring, perhaps you never need to clinch, but you never know. So personally, I like to live by the rule that it's always better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. Thanks for watching, my friends, and this has been Mike Gales for Everlast Nutrition. And if you like these videos, then please click below to like or subscribe, as we're constantly posting up great tips and new ideas that are going to get you into the absolute greatest shape possible.